Let's talk about the ugly truth behind Spotify pre-saves. Hey there, it's John here at Hyped, and in this video I want to talk about Spotify pre-saves. I want to talk about how they work. I want to talk about why they can suck. I want to talk about why they are still so popular and the opportunities for Spotify pre-saves for independent music artists like us. So let's get started by looking at how pre-saves actually work. Because a lot of people think pre-saves are like pre-orders on Amazon, right? Pre-orders for an album on Amazon, for example. But that's not actually the case. There is a huge difference between pre-saves on Spotify and pre-orders on a platform like Amazon. And it's the following. If fans pre-order an album on Amazon, then Amazon gets information, it gets data about the popularity of that album before its actual release, right? And that allows the album to become part of the bestseller list and the charts and so on. But with Spotify, that's not actually the case, right? Contrary to popular belief, when fans pre-save your music, Spotify does not actually get any information of that, right? You're not actually warming up the algorithm or you're doing any of this. And let me explain the technology behind Spotify pre-saves, and then you'll understand why that is the case. There is not actually a native pre-save function in Spotify. Spotify can only save tracks to a fan's library when the tracks are live. Now, the whole idea of a pre-save is that the track isn't live yet. The track isn't public. You're doing this before the release date of the track. So what happens is that when you use any kind of pre-save technology, right, whether it's Hyped or it's any other pre-save tool out there, right, they all work the same way. These tools, they store the fans' authentication with Spotify or their permission from Spotify that they can save your music to their library on the release date, right? So every time a fan comes to a pre-save and they log in with their Spotify profile to authenticate, the tool does not actually save the music to the fan's library in that moment. No, the tool that you're using, it saves the authentication from the fan, the permission from the fan, and then on release date, the software goes out and then adds the track to all of those fans' libraries who authenticated during that pre-save phase. So only on release date does Spotify all of a sudden get the data of who are all the fans who pre-saved your track. Because to Spotify, what it looks like is, oh, on that day, okay, all those people simultaneously saved your track. And this is what works behind the scenes, or this is how it works behind the scenes. And this is also a reason why, again, you're not warming up the algorithm towards the release date. Spotify is only getting any data from your pre-save phase on the actual release date, right? And that's important to understand. Now, there are two risks that I see when using pre-saves for your music, and I think that you want to consider when thinking about using pre-saves. The first risk is that if you get 100 people pre-saving your track before the release date, these fans actually have an opportunity to revoke that pre-save simply by revoking the app access of the tool that you used in Spotify. So any fan or any user on Spotify can simply go into their settings in Spotify and revoke the app access for any application they've given access to their Spotify account. And if fans do this, you might find that from 100 fans who pre-save your music, and let's say maybe 20 revoke access in Spotify, they actually opted out of the pre-save, you might only get 80 of those fans to actually save your music, right? And I'm just using that as an illustration. I'm not saying 20 will, but there's a risk that fans can revoke access and thereby sort of canceling the pre-save. And the second risk I see is this. If you get all those fans pre-saving your track, that means on the release date, you're getting a huge spike in saves of your music to those fans' libraries. But if those fans are not actually going into Spotify and starting to stream their library tracks, and if your track doesn't get into the rotation, then the signal you're sending to the Spotify algorithm looks like this. okay, 100 people just saved my track, but hardly anybody listened to it. Nobody streamed it. Hardly anybody liked it. I mean, you'll figure out what that means to the algorithm, right? But the algorithm is a little bit of a black box. There is no black or white rule on what works and what doesn't. But what seems to universally be an advantage is if the results that you're getting in Spotify, meaning the positive signals that Spotify receives about you as an artist and your music, meaning follower growth, listener growth, streaming growth, people adding your music to their library and liking it and adding it to playlists, there's a balance, right? If for popular music, there's just a balance. Everything sort of grows at the same time, and that sends Spotify a signal, hey, there's really something here there. But if you get a pre-save spike on saves on the or a spike of saves on release day, but nothing else happens, I think that is a risk to sending the right signal to the Spotify algorithm. Now, all this begs the question, John, if you're so critical about Spotify pre-saves, how come they are so popular? Because everybody uses them and everybody promotes them, and every music technology platform in the world has its own sort of pre-save function, right? And I want to give you two answers to that. Spotify pre-saves started to become known or widely known and popular because superstar artists that are, on top of the billboards, they use them. And I think it actually does make sense for those guys. And it makes sense because if you're at that level in the music game, there is a certain amount of buzz happening around your music before the release. It is not buzz that you're necessarily paying for. You're not running ads, right? These guys, they have like huge audiences, and these folks just crave the next new release. And if you put a pre-save in front of a red hot fan audience, just as a way for them to engage with your music before it's actually out, then I agree that pre-saves make sense. Because you can assume that that red hot, crowd that is just waiting for and just anticipating the next release, and they can't wait before it's out, they are actually the ones who are waiting on release day to go into Spotify and then start listening and streaming that track anyway. So in that case, if there's that level of anticipation for your release to hit, then you're getting the spike in saves, the spike in streams, and the spike in listens that you all want to have happen at the same time. And the second reason why pre-saves are so popular, think about it, they promote Spotify, right? And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, but Spotify loves pre-saves because whenever a music artist sends out a pre-save to a fan base or markets or promotes a pre-save, that pre-save does not only market the artist, it also promotes Spotify, right? It's free marketing that Spotify is getting every time somebody's putting out a pre-save. And obviously Spotify likes that because it's a global competition among the streaming platforms. And who wouldn't want, free marketing from half of the artist world? So that is another reason why Spotify pre-saves are so popular. Spotify is only helping keep the buzz up because every pre-save promotes Spotify. Now you might be wondering, John, does this mean Spotify pre-saves are all bad and I should never use them? And I want to use this to talk about opportunities, because the answer is no. I think there's a real place for pre-saves. And I think the place for pre-saves is you should use them with your warm audience. You should use them with your raving fans, right? If you have a group of fans that are so in love with you that they can't anticipate and can't even wait for your next release to come out, give them the pre-save, right? Because they'll pre-save the music. They also come on release date and stream and play your music. And because it doesn't cost you anything, you don't have to spend any money marketing to that warm audience, because you'll likely have them on your email list or you have them following you on social media. That's a really valid and good use case for pre-saves. What I wouldn't do is I wouldn't use pre-saves to a cold audience where you run advertisement to a pre-save just to get pre-saves from folks who have never heard from you, and then you don't know if they'll actually come on release day and stream and listen to your music, right? Now, If you have used a pre-save right now, and maybe the audience has been a mix of cold and warm audience, and you're not sure sort of the best way to deal with this and get this to the release day, then my recommendation will be, whenever you use a pre-save, still send your fans an email on the release day and post on social media on release day that your new track is out with the direct link to it. Because on release day, you're trying to get as many people onto Spotify streaming and listening to your track as well. So again, that you get simultaneous spikes in saves, in listens, in streams. Okay, so that's an opportunity here. Now, I will say that my absolute favorite way of using the save opportunity or the save function in Spotify, where you add your music to a fan's library, is to use it on public tracks, not on unreleased tracks in a pre-save, but just on public tracks. And the reason why I like it is you get 100% conversion of your results, right? I talked about how in the pre-save or in the pre-launch phase, a fan can opt out of the pre-save again if they revoke app permissions. That can't happen with a save, because if you use the same feature, for example, on a Hyped It download gate, right, we have that feature where everybody, whenever a fan downloads your track, it automatically saves that track to their library in Spotify. When that happens, it happens in that instance. The fan can't revoke the app permission. So out of 100 fans sort of taking the action on the gate, you're going to get 100 results. You're not going to get any less. And so that's a benefit. You're getting better conversion. And the second one is that the results on saves of public tracks are a little bit more organic, right? You're not getting this this spike that could be out of tune with the other data that you're getting, or that you're sending to Spotify for listens and streams. But if you do it on a public track, it happens over a longer period of time. And so the results and the growth is going to be a little bit more organic. And I will share this. I have used just standard saves on 4 of my last releases on Spotify. I've used the exact same promotion method on all of those releases, and all of them have been massively picked up by Release Radar, of course, right? But also by Discover Weekly. And I actually want to show you on my screen so that you can see that there's literally sort of the order of the releases, and then there's the order of tracks in which they're being picked up by Discover Weekly. So from all I see, you do not need pre-saves if you do a standard save and you deliver quality data to Spotify through a smart promotion method, which I call, Spotify Growth Engine. Then you can get amazing results, and you can, in my case, get 100% pickup by Discover Weekly just by using standard saves. We're inside my Spotify for Artists account, and here's Discover Weekly, and says 4 songs have been picked up by Discover Weekly. You have these songs here: Lost in My Mind, Back to the Underground, House Music Saved Me, and Your Soul. And keep in mind the numbers and the order of these numbers, right? Lost in My Mind has the most, Back to the Underground, House Music Saved Me a little less, and then Your Soul is at the bottom. So I'm promoting all of these tracks in the same way. And this is exactly the release order, right? This is the oldest track. This is the second oldest track. This is the third oldest. And then this is the youngest track, so to speak. And what happens with Discover Weekly, it takes a couple weeks for it to pick up, right? Discover Weekly, in my experience, is not something you get in week 2 after the release. It needs a little bit more time. But what this tells me is that the promotion method that I'm using here reliably pushes each track into Discover Weekly. And obviously the oldest track has the most streams, and then these are younger tracks. But as time passes, right, these will all gain more Discover Weekly tracks as Spotify sort of scales up their Discover Weekly promotion. And I just wanted to prove out the order of the tracks to you. So if you come over to the releases here, then you'll see Lost in My Mind, that was the track with most Discover Weekly streams. Then was Back to the Underground, then was House Music Saved Me, and then was Your Soul, right? And this is my latest release. It's only been out for a couple days, hasn't been picked up by Discover Weekly, but I'm sure if I'll record another video like this in a couple of days or in a couple of weeks from now, then this will be the 5th track being picked up by Discover Weekly. So pretty powerful stuff, can help you get a lot of streams and get a lot of listens. And this is all just done with traditional saves. There's no pre-saves going on here. Now, if you want to learn more about how to boost your fan base and your streams and your listeners on Spotify with a near automated machine, right, that does it for you 24/7, even if you only want to spend a couple minutes a day setting it up and monitor and make sure everything's right, then join me inside the Spotify Growth Engine coaching program. I have a 6-week coaching program where I'll teach you exactly how to set all of this up. It's a click-by-click training. And at the end of it, you're going to have your own Spotify growth machine running that's going to continuously give you new fans, more streams, and more listeners. I'm going to leave a link around this video or in the description below. Click the link, come over, and I'll invite you to join me inside the Spotify Growth Engine coaching program.